Today we're going to be talking about Mixtape, a new single-player narrative-based game. I'm going to put game in air quotes and I'll touch on that later. I was first made aware of this when it was revealed during Summer Games Fest 2 years ago now, and I've been eagerly awaiting its release ever since. And I'm more than happy to say that after playing through it the other night, Mixtape was fantastic. This was exactly the game that I thought it was going to be, and look, you've seen the title of this video. The last time I used this title for a game, it ended up being my favourite game of the year. I mean, we still have 7 months left in the year, so anything can happen, but yeah, I loved Mixtape. The story of Mixtape focuses around 3 teenagers as they spend their last day together before life takes them in separate directions. We follow Stacy, the main character, a major music nerd, Cassandra, a straight-A's student who is the newest to the squad, who's going through a serious rebellious phase in her life, and Slater, who I can only describe as the chillest dude ever and just the best type of person. We follow these 3 as they reminisce on the best moments of their friendship, all scored by a soundtrack curated by a mixtape made by Stacy. The format of the game more or less is jumping back and forth between past and the present as you live through how these 3 became friends, and as they do teenager things like TP houses, do underage drinking, and as they gear up for one last big party as a send-off to celebrate their friendship. The thing about Mixtape is that it isn't so much a game and more of a series of interactive music videos. Because even though these little vignettes act as little mini games, they aren't challenging or have any kind of lost conditions in them. It's more about giving the player an interactive element to help pull them into the story, the visuals, and the music. It's a millennial-fueled nostalgia trip based on a bunch of teenagers. The stakes are low and the main conflict in the story is very teenager-level drama. But because the game does such a fantastic job of building these characters and showing you why they are as good as friends as they are, I really felt the emotion behind the entire story. Mixtape as a game, it has a lot of style. A lot of the segments are presented in a more fantastical way to express how these moments felt to these characters rather than how they actually played out. And I think a lot of it is done exceptionally well. There are so many fun visual set pieces and quite a few cool visual gags throughout the game that I just absolutely loved. I'm going to keep the details of everything super vague because I think explaining a lot of it out will spoil a lot of the enjoyment that you can get out of this game. The game takes place in the 90s, so it is very millennial coded, references to things 80s and 90s kids grew up with like Blockbuster, VHS tapes, boomboxes, and the story has a very coming of age 80s or 90s type movie vibe. You know, like Breakfast Club meets Wayne's World or something like that. So I actually have a question for the developers, if any of them are watching or, scanning YouTube for reviews. What was the reason behind choosing to base the game in the US? Like, I already knew you guys were a Melbourne-based studio before playing the game, but I would have easily been able to tell just by playing this game that it was made by Australians, because some of the tracks in the soundtrack feel very Australian coded. We've got Silverchair, Mondo Rock, and for fuck's sake, Stacy is wearing a Rage t-shirt in one part of the game. Surely nobody in the US knows what Rage is. Which actually is a good segue to talk about the music. A major part of the game is its music, and whoever curated the playlist for this game is an absolute music nerd. Most of the songs picked for the game are pretty decent deep cuts from well-established bands. Like, I think I maybe knew 3 or 4 of the songs from the whole soundtrack despite knowing 90% of the bands. Even though a majority of the game's soundtrack is licensed music, it does feel like it was all made for this game, because pretty much every song fits its corresponding set piece beautifully. I don't know anything about how this game was made, but if I were to hazard a guess, I think some of the basic plot points were in place, but a lot of the set pieces and visuals were built specifically around the tracks that the studio were able to license, because tonally each song is pretty much perfect. So when I was Googling this game to get some more information about what platforms and stuff the game was going to be on, I stumbled across this official website from the game that lets you actually build your own mixtape and share it with the world. So I did that. I made my own mixtape because it felt like the right thing to do after finishing this game. Anyway, I'll leave a link to the Trollisms Core mixtape that I made in the description of the video for any of you who want to listen to that. Mixtape mixing is kind of a lost art. I guess it's now just making playlists on Spotify. But this website gives you the good vibe of what it's like to make a mixtape. But even though it's all digital, at least this is much less of a pain in the ass than making an actual real-life mixtape. If you're old enough to know, you know. Anyway, you can also visit the website and just scroll through all of the mixtapes that other people have made. It's really, really cool. It probably could have been put into the game in some kind of form. I think that would have been really cool. But as it's on a website, that just means it's accessible to everyone, so go for it. Alright, so let's move on to the more technical side of things. Performance-wise, I was running Mixtape with all of the graphics settings maxed out at 1440p. My specs are on the screen now. I was running the game on uncapped FPS, but the game didn't get much higher than 60 FPS. I didn't have any noticeable frame drops. The characters in the game are animated at a different frame rate than the backgrounds of the game, and because they are usually the focus on the camera in the game, it would have been hard to notice even if the game did drop in FPS. I came across no crashes or game-breaking bugs throughout my playthrough of the game, but there was just a handful of small little bugs here and there, like strange character animations when I was in the field part of the game, where Slater and Cass were obviously not meant to be where they were, so they would like kind of awkwardly path around the place. Also, the camera phased through a car once during one of the scenes. Nothing major, but it was definitely noticeable due to how visually orientated this game is. Also, this game is verified on Steam Deck, so I decided to boot it up and give it a go. It actually ran pretty great. I was fully expecting with the lower specs and the graphical settings that there was going to be a fair bit of visual clarity lost to the game, and especially on the smaller screen. And there is a little, but it looks much better than I thought it would. And due to how pretty, relaxed the controls of the game are, it feels very comfortable to play this way. So yeah, I think if you're planning on playing this on the Steam Deck, it is a decent way to experience Mixtape. Only catch is that you will definitely need headphones. The onboard deck speakers will not cut it. And that goes for any way that you choose to experience this game. Make sure it's on the best headphones or speakers that you've got. It's a music-based experience, so that's just kind of a non-negotiable element of the game. In conclusion, Mixtape. Yeah, I fucking love the game, like come on. Again, it's not so much a game and more of an interactive coming-of-age nostalgia period piece set in the 90s. And it's kind of important to know that before you decide to play the game, because if you're expecting something more, then you'll probably be disappointed with what Mixtape is. While I really loved it, it's certainly not for everyone, and I could definitely see people not really gelling with it or just completely bouncing off of it. There's a certain vibe to this game that if you don't kind of buy into, then you're just not going to like it at all. Also, something very important that you should know before buying is that this game only goes on for about 3 to 4 hours, which at the price point of $30 Australian or $20 US, I can definitely see that being on the slim side for the price of the game. Mixtape is available on Game Pass if you have that and don't feel like buying the game outright, which is a slightly cheaper option to play, as Xbox did just lower the price of the Game Pass subscription, thank God. But for me personally, I think the game is worth the money, and I definitely think I will play it again one day. It has that beginner's guide feel, where I know that one day I will just boot it up and play it all the way through again. Just kind of like you do with your favorite movie. So yeah, I recommend Mixtape to anyone who grew up in the 90s and earlier. Pretty much everyone who is old enough to know what a cassette tape is or has actually used one in their life. But I guess if you're one of those people who go to old YouTube music videos and comment that you were born in the wrong generation because you like music that's older than you, then you'll probably also like it. The game is available now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series S and X, Switch 2 and PC via Steam, Epic Game Store and Game Pass. And that is all I have to say on Mixtape, so thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked the video, then please leave it a like, and if you are new, then consider subscribing. Many thanks to my YouTube members for their continued support. It is always appreciated. This was much shorter than my other reviews, mostly because I didn't really want to over-explain the story or ruin the experience. Maybe once I'm a little less busy and once I've played through the game again, I reckon I'd like to do a more spoilery story analysis on the game, but I won't promise anything. But that's all I have for you today. So I don't know what the next video is going to be, but I'm sure I will see you all again soon. Bye.